Good morning. Today is day 1 of the 7 days of my baking workshop. The purpose of this is to troubleshoot some recipes, find out why certain things are happening, play around with some different flavors. This is all about experimenting and just documentation basically. Today we are going to be making croissants, macarons, and 2 types of cookies. For the croissants, I'm going to be using 2 different recipes, one from my Pinterest and one from one of my cooking books. Here I'm not going to have enough layers. I'm not going to get enough rise time, so my layers once again won't be as defined. To prevent that, I'm going to use proper lamination technique. Make sure I strategically fold my dough and make sure that it doesn't get too hot. Make sure it goes in the fridge and comes out every 15 minutes, so I keep doing that. I'm going to make sure my proofing conditions are ideal, so I'm going to find a nice warm room, put my dough in there to rise. For my macarons, I have 2 recipes as well. I'm going to use my tried and true recipe that uses the cooked sugar. My concerns are that my mixture will be lumpy. For the lumpiness, I'm going to sift my flour vigorously, make sure I get as many clumps out as I can. I'm going to mix effectively and make sure it's not too much, make sure it's not too little mixing. I'm scared that they will not be the same shape going through, even though I have the piping stencil. I'm going to use a brand new recipe today that requires the shells to set. I've never made this macaron recipe. I'm nervous that my shells won't dry with the shell drying technique, so I'm really nervous to see how this turns out. And finally, for cookies, we're making 2 completely different cookies. One's going to be chocolate and one's going to be a sugar cookie. My fear is that it may be too crunchy or they may be undercooked, so it's kind of like a balance type thing. I could get either end of the coin. To combat that, I'm going to measure out my dough. I'm going to weigh it when I'm getting ready to bake it. I'm going to put my cookies in the freezer to set and then watch time and heat as well. I have completed a full work shift from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. My takeaways: the croissants, the first recipe that I used, came out perfectly. I had nice fluffy croissants. The layers were there and I'm so proud of myself. The second recipe with the whole wheat flour, I don't know if I didn't have the levels right, but I don't think I'm going to be using that going forward. Maybe if people were a little bit more health conscious and they wanted me to, I may consider it, but not right now. The buttery flavor was perfect. I think I may need to continue using the butter I'm using because it's true, the higher quality the butter, the better. So I found out, obviously this may be self-explanatory, but the bigger the triangles, the bigger and fluffier my croissants are, and that's what I really like. So next time, I'm going to make sure I get my triangles very big because I've been doing them really tiny. With my macarons, the first batch I made, that was the setting method, the classic macaron method. The setting was perfect, but I think I left them out for too long because when I took them out the oven, the feet were kind of smushed and they were all kind of tilting to one side. I don't know if I didn't space them out enough or if I filled them out too far, or once again, if I left them out for too long. I'm going to try that again tomorrow and see if I can come up with a better result. And for my cookies, my chocolate chip cookies, my chocolate Rocky Road cookies, I did 50 grams. I weighed them out and portioned them out to be 50 grams each. And for my sugar cookies, I weigh them out to be 60 grams each. The 60 gram cookies are, I think, what I want to aim for when I'm making cookies in the future. They spread out perfectly and they were nice and crispy around the edges and they were soft in the middle and they had this nice glossy texture from the caramelization that was very satisfying. My chocolate chip cookies, I don't like chocolate chip. I don't like chocolate chunk cookies, but these were amazing. These were very, very good. The flavor was really good, but I think next time I'm going to make them bigger like I made my sugar cookies. Yeah, I think that was it. From today. That's all I concluded. I got a lot of things done. I learned a lot of new things and I'm so glad I'm doing this. So see you tomorrow. Good morning. It is 6:47 right now, so I'm a little late. Supposed to be up at 5, but today's a little bit of an easier day. I don't know if I just jinxed myself by saying that, but I'm going to be making coffee cake. For the coffee cake, I'm nervous about making cakes because my cakes a little bit weak. I'm nervous about both my coffee cake and my cupcakes being too dry. I'm worried about my coffee cake being too crumbly and has a streusel on top, so I'm worried about that not being kept together and properly hydrated. I plan to fix that by watching my temperature and making sure I don't keep it in there for longer than it needs to be in there for. I'm gonna make sure my streusel is has proper moisture in it. I'm gonna be making a rendition of a chocolate chip cookie, caramel chocolate chip cookies. For my chocolate chips, it's the same as yesterday, and I'm worried about them being too crunchy, not enough spread. So for that, I'm going to watch my heat. I'm going to make sure they're all uniform. I'm going to freeze them as I make them. I'm going to make them all 60 grams today because I think I really like how big the 60 grams are. For my cupcakes, same thing. I'm worried about them being too dry. I'm also worried about them not getting enough rise. With my cupcakes, I feel like I either fill them too much or I don't fill them enough. And I really want them to be uniform as well, so I got to make sure I measure those as well and portion those out properly. To combat those things, I'm going to make sure I use the proper heat, watch those as well. I'm going to fill those properly and measure them like I just said, and make sure they get enough air as I'm creaming the butter and the sugar and all of that together to see if that makes a difference. Day 2, the results from the coffee cake. So funny story, the recipe called for sour cream and I did the wrong thing and I put cream cheese instead of sour cream, and I was very frustrated. I was very down. That's what this week is for me to experiment and see what happens, and I think it was the best case scenario because when I took it out the oven, it was golden, it was chewy. The crumble on top, that was another thing. Normally coffee cakes have this crumbly brown sugar type of crumble on top. The crumble that they made me make, it was almond, lemon zest, and sugar, and it was so good. It was, I loved it. It was very different. Third thing, in the recipe, I was supposed to use a tube pan instead of a bundt cake pan, but I ended up using a bundt cake pan because I got the two confused. I had to refigure out how I was gonna do that, but it ended up looking very good. Only thing is now, the normal bundt cake, you know, the top is supposed to be the ridges and everything, that is on the bottom so that the streusel can be shown, and it looks, I'd say it looks really good and it tastes really good, which is even better. I do want to go back and bake it with sour cream just so I can taste the different profiles and see which one I like. It was very moist as well. That's my biggest thing with cakes. I don't want them to be underdone, so I end up on the flip side. I end up going to the other extreme, which is over baking it and it being tough, but this was perfect. With my chocolate chip cookies, they were nothing special. I mean, they were good, don't get me wrong, but they weren't like life-changing. They were very different because they had the caramel in them, and I feel like they will get a lot of hits. I wanted to make them all 60 grams. However, the caramel that I used, I had to put it in the center and then wrap the cookie dough around it. So that kind of threw my measurements off, and I didn't want the balls to be too big, but they ended up being smaller than I wanted them to be, obviously, because of that. So next time I do want them to spread a little bit more. They didn't spread very well. So I wonder if I make them actually 60 grams, if they will spread out more, or if it has something to do with the amount of chocolate chips or whatever. See, like, there's so many variants that can be played with. They tasted like store-bought cookies. Like, they tasted like I could go in my freezer at the grocery store aisle and buy them and I wouldn't know the difference. That's what I want to do one day though. Aston, write that down for me. That caramel really took it a step up from regular chocolate chip cookies to a little bit more higher. So for that, they do gain a little bit more brownie points. Last but not least, we have the strawberry cupcakes. I think by far this is my favorite recipe. They smelled like the Publix cupcakes that I buy and I'm obsessed with. My biggest goal, making a cupcake from scratch that tastes like the Publix cupcakes, if not better. And I think this has been by far the closest recipe, and I will keep this recipe until I find a better one because it's not too sweet. The mixture itself is nice and moist. Takeaways from this, I want my cupcakes to be nice and uniform. I always underfill or overfill my cupcakes so they don't rise enough or they rise too much and it's a big mess. So I made sure to really eyeball, I think it was a tablespoon scoop of each, and then I went back around and tried to level them all out accordingly. That gave me a little bit of more favorable outcome. They rose pretty well I want them to rise a little bit more next time, so maybe I have to fill them up just a little bit more, maybe 2 teaspoons. This recipe had me use sunflower oil instead of regular vegetable oil, and that was very, very interesting to me. I've never seen a cake recipe that called for sunflower oil. These were very refreshing to me. The strawberry compote that I made, it just elevated it, and then the whipped cream. The whipped cream had me use powdered milk to kind of, I guess, fortify it, but it was really, really, really good. I loved it. So suffice to say, I think my favorite item of the day was cupcake, but I think overall, I feel like the chocolate chip cupcakes were a fan favorite. I had someone come back and ask me for more. They were willing to pay for more. So, I mean, hey, I'm doing something right. Alrighty, that's the end of day 2. See you on day 3.